Pasadena, and it is standing room only. They actually had to do a tent outside in the back here of somebody's backyard because the city of Pasadena closed down. They said that the Pasadena Republican Club would be open for dinner, but no speakers, because that makes sense. Anyway, look what we're looking at here. This is standing room only. There's the delightful Michelle.
Grassroots all the way.
Michelle Martinez, incredible extraordinaire. And we are looking here at an incredible group of patriots.
Freedom fighters.
Freedom fighters. Amazing.
We will not be stopped. Oh, I know. You should have stopped. I have tons of my papers. It's just been amazing how God shows up all the time for me. Except when I need my nose. Well, it's my honor to introduce our distinguished guest this evening. Dave Sussman is a dad, an interviewer, and a writer at davesussman.com. He's also a contributor at The Independent, RBN, which is the Range Broadcasting Network, and Ricochet.com. You've also seen him at One American News, Fox News, Newsmax, and Fox Business Network. Dave is also a moderator and a speaker at many political conventions, including Freedom Fest, Politicon, and CPAC, to name a few. For the past 3 years, Dave's been a regular guest host at the Real Side Radio on 73 stations on Salem Radio Network. Wow. His highly ranked and popular podcast, Whiskey Politics, that's found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, is in its 5th year. And he's had some amazing guests. Recent guests include Senator Ted Cruz, Senator Marsha Blackburn, Judge Jeanine Pirro, Victor David Hansen, many of the Trump administration officials, and over 250 other luminaries, politicians, and newsmakers. So here to speak to us tonight, Mr. Dave Sussman.
Oh, the microphone is falling.
That's not a good start. Okay. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
How are you?
Great.
Look at this room. Are you kidding me? Aren't we in the middle of like Armageddon or something? I don't know. Congratulations. First of all, I want to thank Michelle for opening up her home, putting on this incredible event at your home, and welcome me back to the Pasadena Republican Club. And I want to thank you all for being here. According to the mainstream media, we're all nuts. We're all crazy. Right? Just by a show of hands, real quickly, who has turned off the mainstream media? Almost everybody.
Who turned it off 8 years ago?
I did too. In 2012, I got rid of my cable. I actually had satellite. I've been using Roku. I cut the cord, and guess what? I get to see everything I want to see. It's all there. I like Tucker. I know everybody's kind of negative on Fox News right now, and for a lot of reasons. They should be. But Tucker's great. And so I can still watch Tucker on YouTube as well. But this is seen as a sign of bravery, ladies and gentlemen. Just all of us being here tonight, and I want to congratulate you all. And especially in the past couple of weeks when we're talking and feeling the frustrations and the anger and the vitriol and the hope that we're going to see something in the next few days that Sidney Powell releases the Kraken. We're all ready for it, right? Anyway, it's been a couple of years since I spoke here last. Anything happened in the last couple of years? I've been trying to stay in shape myself the last couple of years, especially with this lockdown. I mean, the first couple of months, I was noticing that I was doing a lot of this at night, watching 7 episodes of Ozark or whatever it may be. And but I'm really excited because my new weight set just got in this morning. I'm really excited. Apparently, if I do bench presses, I'm used to doing about 150 pounds, I will do 450 pounds. By the way, the name of my weight set is Dominion. This election is crazy. Wasn't it just nuts? It was just insane. I don't know. You know, when you think about how women fought so long and so hard for the vote, and then all of a sudden the left, they want an all-male voting system? It's a way homer, folks. Michelle, did you bring the rim shot? It's incredible, though. I mean, the Democrats actually put up Joe Biden. The man is an old 78. There are young 78-year-olds. I know young 90-year-olds. He's aged out. The man's shelf life expired 5 years ago.
Oh, no, he was old in the
Come on, man.
Come on, man. All right, I promise you I'll try not to use the word folks too many times tonight. Joe Biden is like a web browser with 19 pages open, 17 of them are frozen, and he doesn't know which one's playing the music. But seriously, the fact that we're in this backyard, we're having this event is incredible to me, because it shows that no matter what we're facing, forget about being a political party or being a conservative or a libertarian or a Republican or just a right-minded individual. We know something is inherently wrong in this country right now. We're worried. We're wondering. I'm a father of 2 sons, one in college, one in high school, and I'm worried for my kids. This lockdown, the way that these politicians have used this pandemic, and none of us say that there's no pandemic, it's not a hoax or anything, but they've weaponized it for political purposes. So, you know, I think, what was it, California deaths peaked on August the 10th from the Rona, and I will use the word Rona, that's what I call it, at 148 per day on August the 10th. As of yesterday, according to the CDC, California had 41 deaths. So less than a third of the peak. And Gavin French Laundry Newsom has taken it upon himself to decide that what we're doing all here tonight is illegal. You talk about Thanksgiving. My mother is not joining my family for Thanksgiving. We're heading up to Park City. We're getting the heck out of Dodge. My family's leaving California, much to my disappointment. I've got family moving to Utah, to Colorado, to Florida, and my mother, she's scared to death. My mother, she's like us. She's right of center. She's scared to death of the left. But she, like many people, have been watching the news for the past 7, 8, 9 months now almost. And, you know, after the left have ruined our businesses, they decided that some businesses are going to be open, some aren't. You can make money, you can't. Your kids can go to school. Me, Gavin Newsom, I'm going to put my kids in private school. You can't get your hair cut. But me, Nancy Pelosi, I'm all good. And I think what we saw this last 2 weeks was 73, 74, and if you believe the real numbers, maybe closer to 80 million patriots, even people that may be just left of center, they said, I've had enough. I've had enough. I may not like his behavior, I may not like his tweets, but the left scare the bejeebies out of me. And that's what we saw with this election. How do we get here? How did we get to this point where in the state of California, where unlike other states around the country, red states that have not enacted these draconian measures to lock us down, businesses are still open? You know where the numbers of the Rona are highest? Blue states. Blue states. You've got governors in New York, or a governor in New York, who literally killed 7,000, 8,000 people by putting them back into nursing homes.
Ooh.
You've got the governor of California deciding which businesses can survive and can't. People are now living on the retirement. Many have already run out. What are we doing here? Thanksgiving? You're no longer allowed to celebrate with your family for Thanksgiving? And that's going to lead into Christmas. Don't think for a moment it won't.
Dark winter.
What the left, this is a wish list for them. They are achieving their goals. They've been attacking Thanksgiving for years. They hate tradition. They hate religion. They hate our history. Thanksgiving, which leads into Christmas, is their least favorite time of the year. It's about family. It's inclusion. It's about the generosity of spirit. And big government promotes the exact opposite. They promote breaking families apart, keeping them on welfare, enabling single-parent households. And the only generosity of spirit is only acceptable through the hands of government largesse. On your dime, folks. The holidays is, for better or for worse, in my opinion, it's a perfect example of family, and also, maybe to a lesser extent, certainly more so in recent years, capitalism, free markets. Some would say consumerism, and I think we are leading more towards consumerism. That's not such a great thing. But at the end of the day, all of us as parents and grandparents, don't we enjoy that moment when little Billy or Susie open up that gift next to the tree or the menorah? The government, California, the Democrats, and the left, they don't like that. They want to institutionalize our families. They want to make sure that our children learn through state institutions and education and make sure they stay on your insurance until they're 26. They don't want children becoming adults. Obamacare, 26 years old. I don't know about you, but at 26 I had my own business. I was engaged. I was living my life. I started working when I was 14. Because my father told me, my late father, an entrepreneur, he said, if you want something, you better go work for it. Where did we lose that lesson? Whereby now the government will provide. Now the latest thing, we're going to write off your college loans. Hey, that's great if you're right now in college. What about the rest of us that either paid our way through college or took out student loans or saddled them onto our parents? How did we get here? I keep asking that question. In 1977, my father came home to our home in northwest London where I was born. And he said to us, I was an 8-year-old, he said, right, Cockney, East Ender, grew up in the German Blitz in World War II. My grandfather was shot down over Nazi-occupied France and was a prisoner of war in a German camp, RAF. We're leaving. We're out. I said, where are we going? He says, California. Because when I grew up, the dummy boxes in the store windows with no fruit and no food because of rations showed the orange trees of the San Fernando Valley. They didn't show the strip malls in Reseda. And I had no choice in the matter. I was 8 years old, and I told my friends, I'm moving to America. I guess I'm wearing a cowboy hat. And we got on the QE2. Anybody remember the QE2? One of the old classic cruise lines. And spent a week crossing the Atlantic. And just like the immigrants in the early 1900s, we came through New York Harbor. I was woken up at 6 o'clock in the morning to come up on deck and see the Statue of Liberty. 12 years later, 12 years, I waited in the long line. I became a naturalized immigrant. And I stood in the LA Convention Center with my right hand raised, swearing to the Constitution with 2,500 of my new immigrant friends. I had to take a test, ladies and gentlemen. I had to take a test to become a citizen of the United States. I had to understand what the Constitution was about. I had to know certain things like what the first 10 amendments were called. Anybody? Why do we not allow our citizenry to become educated where they have to take that same test to vote for their own leaders? Instead, they are indoctrinated by our schools, by Oprah, by late night comedians. Anybody laugh in the past few years? Maybe ever since Jay Leno or Johnny Carson? They're not funny. And California, the year that I got here, I went to a public school, Wilbur Avenue School in Tarzana. We were renting a house. And I rode my bike down there, which quickly got stolen a week later. Or brought over from England. And it was a great school. It was a public school. And then Jerry Brown, in 1978, implemented one word which changed this state forever. Anybody know what that word is?
Busing.
I got on this foul polluting bus and it took me down to Culver City or somewhere east of Culver City, Shenandoah Elementary School. And I was a British kid. I still hadn't lost my accent. Apparently, you lose your accent only if you come here before puberty. Who knew? When I'm with my mom, I'm like, hello! So I can come out, especially with a couple of whiskeys.
Good Scottish whiskey.
And I got picked on. I was, this it just happens to be what it is. This girl, she was like, in my mind, she was 6 feet tall. She comes up to me, she was pointing me in the chest, and she said, talk English, inner city girl. And I was like, I thought I was. But in 43 years, since that moment, what has happened to our state? Homelessness, illegal immigration, sanctuary cities, drugs, defecation in the city streets, school systems down to the lowest levels across the United States, business climate, one of the worst. I've lost 9 personal friends in just the last year to other states from California, not including my 3 family members that are now moving. They're getting out. Tennessee, Florida, Texas, Utah, Nevada. Everything in California that God has touched is absolutely beautiful. I'm a mountain climber, I'm a hiker, I love the beaches like we all do. Everything God has touched is almost perfection. It's the Garden of Eden. Everything man has touched, especially the leftists in this state, has turned it to crap. There is not one measurable impact by the left that has improved things for people. In 2016, I wasn't a fan of President Donald Trump. I wrote about him in 2015. Out of the 17 candidates that were on that dais, I liked Rubio, I liked Fiorina, I take that back now. And I thought Donald Trump couldn't win. I thought he was too crass. But I voted for him with my fingers crossed behind my back because he was telling us that he wanted constitutional originalists as judges at the Supreme Court. That he wanted to lower regulations. That he wanted to lower our taxes. And a whole measure of other things that are important to all of us as conservatives, constitutionalists, Israel. And I voted for him thinking, if he does half of what he says, of what he promises, I'll be a happy man. He didn't just do half. He said he would change America. Who among us truly believed that he wasn't just going to change America, but he changed the world? The Middle East, China, North Korea, TPP, NATO, the Iran deal. All of the things that we knew were bad. With an economy that was on rocket fuel. Unemployment, the lowest levels across all demographics. He was heading towards a massive landslide election. However, as I talk about, and I've talked about on my show over the past 4 years, unexpected events can and do happen. They're called black swan events. We've heard that term. Things that you can't predict. 9/11, a black swan. The 2008 financial crisis. Most 99.99999% of us didn't predict it.
I knew about it.
Very few, and congratulations, sir. I should have invested with you.
Subprime loans were designed to cause it.
Yeah, the loans.
And now a global pandemic and the subsequent lockdowns by the children running our state houses and our media. They are children. They are 32-year-old anchors that are telling us that we need to just shut up and do what they say. Trump should have, and I believe did, win this election. But some are blaming Trump himself, and I want to address this for a minute. His tweets, his abrasiveness, his first debate. Trump fatigue is the word. And the Democrats played on that. You got to give them credit. They watch, basically they're preaching to people that don't follow politics in depth like you do. Low information voters. They watch Dancing with the Tards, as I call it. Or only absorb left-leaning news, which is 99.8% of the news that's out there today. I get it. My mother hates the left, as I just mentioned. She's 75 years old, but she cringes almost every time Trump speaks. A lot of people do. And I get that. And for those that don't, all the power to you. He didn't make it easy for moderates, the folks in the middle, to vote for him. But I see it as something more than this. Michelle mentioned some of the guests that we've had on the show. Victor Davis Hansen, one of my favorites, I'm sure one of yours. Victor Davis Hansen invited us to his home last year. You can find it on YouTube, okay, at home. He's been on my show several times. And his latest book just came out last year. It was called The Case for Trump. Anybody read it? Highly recommended. He talks about Donald Trump in a very profound way. And that way is this. He refers to him as the Shane character, or the character in High Noon, or the man from the High Plains with no name, Clint Eastwood.
Oh, yeah.
And the towns that Clint Eastwood or Gregory Peck or whoever it is comes into is in trouble. They're being attacked by whatever the situation may be. I don't want to say anything politically incorrect in 2020. Who's attacking the small towns in the West?
My plane's drifter.
The hero saves the town. He cleans out the undesirables. And then what happens?
The town turns on him.
The town turns on him. The hero becomes the villain. The people that needed somebody to protect them now becomes persona non grata because they're too crass. I don't like his manners. I don't like him spitting that tobacco out from the side of his horse. We can see that as well with other incredible historic figures. George S. Patton. You've read your books on George Patton. You've seen the movie. Gregory, what's this, Scott? George C. Scott, thank you. Okay? He slapped the kid with PTSD in the hospital. Oh, how could he? That poor soldier. Yeah. Patton was a quote-unquote son of a bitch. That's what we called Rommel, right?
Yeah.
I read your book!
Magnificent son of a bitch.
Magnificent son of a bitch. Churchill won the war. I am standing here today because of Winston Churchill. My father took incoming in the East End of London in the German Blitz.
Wow.
And because of Winston Churchill and the Allies, we fought back. No thanks to half of England at the time. What happened when Winston Churchill ran for office again? He won prime minister. He was booted out. So you've got this tsunami of negative information. You've got the media that suppressed any bad news for Democrats and highlighted all of the negative information, true or not true, about Donald Trump. good people on both sides in Charlottesville? BS. He did not say that. You know the true story. Bleach? Inject bleach? BS. You know he was talking about capsulizing UV light. Except the media have been purporting the lies to the American public, and most people believe it because it's repeated. Goebbels 101, repeat a lie often enough until it becomes truth. They spent 4 years attacking Trump while never holding the Democrats accountable. Meanwhile, America's trust in our institutions was continuing to collapse. Not only did we have little faith in our media, we saw our universities now becoming indoctrination centers for socialism. Hollywood and pop culture took the side of the Marxists. Late night comedy became the home of Trump derangement. And not all that funny either. I grew up watching Johnny Carson. It was funny. He skewered both sides. Jay Leno did as well. What happened? I don't watch it anymore. I can't. Sports franchises decided to join BLM and take a knee during our national anthem. And then we started to learn that the cancer was also deeply rooted in the institutions that were supposed to protect our liberty. Spygate showed that the Clinton campaign paid for and promulgated the fake Russian collusion narrative that was repeated over and over. And even though it's been thoroughly debunked, half the country still believes this. You're going to have dinner with Thanksgiving family and friends, and you have to defend this still. The FBI, the DOJ, the CIA, they played a role in leading up to what the Mueller investigation became, which ultimately was, again, debunking any Russian collusion, but that opened the door to the Ukraine narrative, which then impeachment in the House of Representatives. FBI lovers Strzok and Page sold our country out and became heroes to the left. Disgraced FBI Director James Comey still gets big checks to do speaking engagements. He should be in jail. Clapper and Brennan, who pushed the Russian collusion hoax, should be also in jail, but instead they are warmly welcome on NBC and ABC News. We had Senator Ted Cruz on the show recently, Michelle just mentioned. And I asked him point blank, I said, Senator, you are a senator. And I asked Marsha Blackburn the same question. One of your colleagues, Senator Cruz and Senator Marsha Blackburn, one of your colleagues, Senator Warner from Virginia, who was just reelected, he went into the SCIF, the secure room in the Senate. You're not allowed any electronic devices in the SCIF. You're not allowed to take any pictures. You're not allowed phones. Anything. Senator Warner took a picture of the FISA memo, the application that's been debunked, and his office is on FBI tapes, sharing it with Ali Watkins at BuzzFeed, who then in turn released it to the Washington Post and the New York Times. This is what led to the Mueller report. Senator Cruz, he's a colleague of yours. What action are you going to take against your own colleagues? Obviously, the FBI and the DOJ aren't going to do anything. Well, if that's true, then he broke the law. And nothing. And we all do, Cruz. He's one of the Tea Party senators that ran in 2010. And I hoped that if Trump was reelected, and he still might, we'll see, that he will become our next AG in 2 years when he has to run for re-election for Senate. What happened? Nothing. Hypocrisy of the Hunter Biden laptop. Moscow's mayor's wife gave him $3.5 million. The guy's a crackhead, and he's supposed to be running a $1.5 billion Chinese fund? No offense to Hunter Biden, other than the fact that you shouldn't be closely monitoring or managing or organizing anything. The guy belongs in rehab. My heart goes out to him, okay? He's a human being. He obviously gone through some troubled times. But he basically used his name to open the door to make himself obscenely wealthy because his father was going to provide goodies for Ukraine. Yet the House impeached Trump for the very things they accused Trump of doing. We've all seen the tape of Joe Biden, in his own words, threatening Ukraine to withhold $1 billion unless they stop the investigation of Hunter's firm. Well, son of a bitch, they fired the prosecutor. Hardy, 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 hard.
He's never denied.
A recent poll showed that 4.6% of Democrats said that if they knew about the Joe Biden laptop email scandal, proving that he was paid millions so his dad would ensure friendly policies with China and Russia and Ukraine, they would not have voted for him. 4.6% of Democrats. Folks, that's the election. That's the election. So the media played goalie for the Democrats
And Facebook.
and the tech titans. But even with the schools spitting out mind-numb kids who went to corporations and the media with their socialist ideas, they still feared losing to Trump. Even with all the control they had regarding the message. Whatever happened to, by the way, Churchill's quote? We're talking about Churchill here. If you're under 30 and not a liberal, you have no heart, and if you're over 40 and you're not conservative, you don't have a brain. The switch hasn't happened with this latest generation. It seems as if they're just not switching. I thought when I got my first paycheck, like many people here, and I saw, who's FICA? I'm conservative. They own sports, media, corporations, big tech. They mold the minds, and people don't pay attention, only know what they feel. It's all about the feels with a Z. And Trump never saw that. He appealed to 73, maybe 80 million people. 10 million voted for him that didn't vote for him in 2016. That's never happened before. Barack Obama lost 4 million voters in 2012 in his re-election. Trump gained 10 million at least.
And women.
Incredible. Do I believe he lost this election? Not in a million years. Democrats planned to steal this election long before the election. They sued hundreds and hundreds of lawsuits across state legislatures over the last year to do what? To reduce the security of the vote. They made it easier to cheat. They made it easier for to pad the voters with fraudulent ballots. And then they pushed the Rona virus. Again, it's not a hoax. People are dying. But 99.997% of people don't. So, what happened? The panic porn, as I call it, it ruined many people. It ruined people's businesses. It ruined their livelihoods. It shut down restaurants, retail, and in many cases, forever. The Independent Restaurant Association of America estimated that 60% of all restaurants will not make it. They will not survive. And these people have already lived on their retirement savings. They have no alternatives. Many are resorting to drugs, drink, divorce, and suicide. But for the Democrats, they pushed and they pushed until their media, the colleges, the pop culture, the sports teams, the social media tech titans, and corporations all shoved voting by mail down our throats, foie gras style. Historically, the number of ballots that are returned for mail-in is insignificant. It's tiny. And out of that tiny, tiny percentage of mail-in ballots, approximately 1%, historically speaking, of those ballots were fraudulent. It was such a small percentage of such a small number that it didn't make any difference. It was negligible. But not with 160 million votes, and a large percentage of them mail-in. Even if it was 1% fraud, which was the average before this election, that means 1.6 million bogus ballots. Many are suggesting that the percentage may actually be 3 to 5%. 5% would be 8 million votes. We lost Wisconsin by 20,000. And other states, 30,000, 50,000. Add that to the massive vote switching with Dominion software, the counting systems across most of this country, all of the contested states, Shenanigans at the precinct level, where hundreds of affidavits are now being presented to courts. We just had Project Veritas on my show today. Check it out. How is it possible that 150,000 votes came in from Georgia with only Biden selected? Nothing else below Biden. If you're a Democrat or Republican, you're going to vote for your congressperson, your senator, if not dog catcher. You know how many votes or how many ballots came in with only Trump?
98.
833. But a tiny, insignificant number. This was the Dems' MO. We have a stolen election. The game plan was set. COVID lockdowns, cause a recession during an election year. Use suppression polls to make people believe, oh, it's over. 16, 17 percentage points for Biden in Wisconsin the day before? He lost it by 20,000 fraudulent votes? Use corrupted software in the few states they must win? Use media to shove the fraudulent results down America's throat? Do we accept Joe Biden as a legitimate president?
No.
But they're ensuring you accept the vote. They want all media, including the tech titans, to control the narrative. Yesterday, Senator Mazie Hirono, she asked Mark Zuckerberg and Twitter, Jack Dorsey, to ban real Donald Trump after he leaves office. You remember Mazie Hirono from the Kavanaugh hearings? She came out and told all men to do what? Shut up! Maybe one of the dumbest senators in the well. Senate hearing yesterday with Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey. The Democrats are now siding with tyranny. Speech suppression, ideological and political tyranny. They want us to shut up and just make our widgets and die quickly so we don't use the Medicare. This is the design behind Obamacare. But we're smarter than that.
That's right.
Even if they got to Fox News, Lachlan and James Murdoch, as you know, they've been moving most of FNC's content more left over the last couple of years. And after their election night debacle, where they jumped on President-elect Biden bandwagon before the constitutional measures afforded to the president to ensure that the election was safeguarded occurred, Fox News, their shares are down 12%. Newsmax. The fact that there are votes being switched, all for Biden, that's all these glitches ended up falling on Biden's side of the net. Every single one of these glitches was more votes for Biden, less votes for Trump. It's not just highly improbable, but it's practically impossible. Ohio, historically, this was the state that no president could ever win without. 8 points. 8 points. Donald Trump won. Next door to Michigan and Wisconsin. Massive votes came in when they turned off the machines in the middle of the night. They did the switch. They did the switch. The voter fraud, I believe, is massive. And obviously the big kahuna is Dominion software. We see it in many other examples across the country. We see people moving votes, not calling votes. They're finding boxes of ballots, 3,000 here, 6,000 there. Most of them are for Trump. But they are pushing the certification as quickly as possible. The Georgia election official yesterday said, "It appears that our election office did not misplace any ballots. Rather, it appears that this is a computer software mishap with the Dominion system." That statement was quickly taken off of their website. Another one from Georgia. Of the 2,631 votes, it appeared that between 1,600 and 1,900 were cast for President Trump. In Las Vegas, in Nevada, I lived in Vegas for 5 years. The Clark County Commission just threw out an election that represents almost 1/6 of the total votes cast in Las Vegas because there were too many, quote unquote, discrepancies to be sure that a result in the election can be certain. So if they took out that district, Don't you think the entire 153,000 votes that they have problems with should also be thrown out? Or at least recounted? 400,000 votes in Vegas, Clark County, all computer verified. You know what they did? In Clark County, you have to lower or raise the settings to match for signatures.
Set it at 0 or 40.
If you lower it, a scribble can pass. If you increase it all the way to the top, most votes won't go through. You find about 75%, which makes sure, verifies the signature. Somebody lowered it down to 20%. And of course, there's Sidney Powell. Sidney Powell, former federal prosecutor who's taken the lead in the Dominion software accounting software investigation. She says she's releasing the Kraken about Dominion and the systemic manipulation of the votes across several states. She stated, every red candidate anywhere who lost by less than 6% should be filing suit right now or joining an existing suit. But you're not going to hear this much from the MSM, the DNC, the establishment with the GOP, big tech and our DOJ. They're all against Trump. And as long as this fraud can't be proven, they're happy to move on. Why? Well, what do they want? To fundamentally transform America with their socialist policies. They want to tax you 2/3 of your income. They want to redistribute wealth to social programs that will disincentivize humans to work, to better themselves. They want to increase minimum wage so that small business owners will have to close their doors. And they want to provide reparations for the sins of our great-great-great-great-grandfathers and grandmothers. Most of us weren't even living in the country at the time.
We're in Germany.
They want to solidify power for generations by adding Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico as states. And with that, 4 new Democrat senators. And don't think for a moment it ends there. You're going to start hearing about Guam and American Samoa.
So divide Alaska into 5 and divide Texas into 5 when the Republicans get back.
Well, when they added Alaska, they also added Hawaii, so there was parity. Alaska and Hawaii, believe it or not, I don't know if everybody knows this, Alaska was blue, or the equivalent of blue back then. It was Democrat, and Hawaii was conservative. That switched, but they added both at the same time.
Yeah, but 2 can play that game.
They want to add unlimited numbers of Supreme Court justices, stacking the court. So instead of 9, we end up with 15 or 20 or who knows. And they're already planning to rejoin the Iran deal, which will enable our enemies and make our allies less secure. They want China to spew pollution in the air unchecked, while America gets rid of fracking and our fossil fuel and no longer stays the independent energy source that we are. They want you to do one thing, and that is this. Obey.
Venezuela.
Be compliant.
Or we'll beat you up.
To shut up and make your widgets and die. And hopefully not too far after you retire, because we all know that Social Security and Medicare is a Ponzi scheme. We're not going to talk about that. Now, you want the good news? Why have they spent so much time and effort to marginalize and demonize Trump and his supporters, us? Why did they take such a massive risk in committing such widespread voter fraud on such an incredible scale? Because they are desperate.
Panic.
They know they've lost their coalitions. Blacks, Hispanics, the blue-collar workers, the union workers. This was the backbone of the Democratic Party for generations. Blacks and Hispanics have woken up to realize that the Democrats, with their union-controlled school districts, which has spat out illiterate kids, they're waking up that they've been lied to for generations, only coming around every 4 years, using fear to scare the low-information voters. Those folks over there, they're the racists. They're the white supremacists. Those Proud Boys or whoever it is. We see movements now like Walkaway, started by Brandon Struck for gays to leave the Democrats. We see Blexit for blacks. We see Jexodus for Jews. All leaving the Democrat Party. Jexit. And Lexit. Michelle. Democrat internal polling showed blacks disagree with Black Lives Matter. While most agree with the message of all lives matter, and while most, let me just say this, obviously, we all have zero tolerance for police brutality of any kind. We all agree with that. But BLM is a fundamentally Marxist organization. They say that themselves on their website. They subscribe to the same totalitarianism that consumed other socialist and communist countries like a cancer. The great black intellectuals like Shelby Steele and Tom Sowell are seeing the baton being passed on to younger, energized black conservatives like David J. Harris, Candace Owens, and even liberal converts like civil rights attorney Leo Terrell. Leo 2.0. He's one of the loudest voices supporting Trump's administration's policies. And because of this, the Democrat infighting between, I hate using this term, moderates. I strongly disagree with the media. I'm sorry. Nancy Pelosi, Adam Schiff, Gerald Nadler are not moderates, okay? But the infighting between them and the squad, AOC, Rashid Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, it's going to blow up. The Democrat Party is now fully owned by BLM, the squad, and the socialists who want to use the heavy hand of government to run our lives. People have woken up. They see Pelosi get her hair done in an otherwise closed salon. Newsom enjoying his $400 per head dinner at French Laundry without his mask in the cider room. We're sick of seeing these kings and queens blatantly live a life of complete hypocrisy. Rules for thee, not for me. And the fact that Donald Trump officially got 73 million votes, 10 million more than 2016, shows that even those who complained about his tweaks and his brusque personality, and yes, sometimes he has one, it's the policies that count. Stay positive, folks. The Democrats understand that the only way that they can win elections is to hide their candidate and their running mate. Does anyone remember that press conference that Kamala Harris took when she had all those questions from the press? Remember that? No? Because she didn't. As a candidate for Vice President of the United States, she didn't take one question from the press. And the questions that Joe Biden took really focused on ice cream. The VP candidate who is very likely to replace the president at any moment is unvetted. She's a maturing candidate. She's a Trojan horse. And while the left celebrate her identity, because for them, it's all about melatonin and plumbing. That's the most important thing. It's history. Oh! She is yet a deeply unpopular, flawed person. And they know it. That's why they hid her from us. Her fake cackle almost makes Hillary's acceptable. I'm sorry, she's a weather vane, okay? She will say and do whatever she thinks needs to be said. No fracking? Oh yes, we love ourselves some fracking. And then the question becomes this. Will America, I know we won't, will America accept them as the duly elected president? In other words, will America obey? I'll leave you with this question, which I'm sure you know the answer. Joe Biden, Barack Obama, CNN, and the Washington Post are all on a sinking ship. Who gets saved?
Well,
America.
From the floor. So, yes.
yeah, I got five actually really quick quotes, so we'll take about a minute. You mentioned the Kraken. You remember Perseus slew the Medusa. That's what Trump did in 2012. He slew the Medusa. That was Hillary. Gary Cooper. Somebody asked him some political question. He says, "Who cares? I'm an actor." You mentioned Winston Churchill. When he lost his seat, he said, "An empty taxi cab drove up and Clement Attlee got out." That's what I quoted to my brother-in-law who was getting ready to vote for Barack Obama. About Grant. You mentioned Grant. His detractors didn't like him. You know what President Lincoln said about Grant? "I can't spare this man, he fights. I can't spare Donald Trump, he fights. I don't care what his personality is like."
Amen.
And you mentioned Joseph Goebbels. In his diary, he gave credit for all of his propaganda skills to one man, Woodrow Wilson.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Yes, he did.
All right. Yes, a question, please.
Yes. You know, my son is like 27. They don't watch Fox News or CNN. They watch these characters on the internet, like
Yeah.
Tim Pool or
Yes.
people like that.
Yes.
So it seems like they're not getting a lot of the
Or Dave Sussman, she said.
Yeah, you know, just different characters.
Steven
that-
Crowder.
that- I think he has more ratings than CNN, but
Yeah.
they're kind of liberal people, but they're kind of honest. They don't like.
Well, Tim Pool is actually a liberal convert, and he voted for Trump, but he kind of came into voting for Trump kicking and screaming. He's more of a libertarian-minded liberal. Dave Rubin, similar, right? And Tim Pool, you're correct, getting incredible ratings, and a lot of the folks that, and I've really adapted my watching to a lot of what I see on YouTube as well. Joe Rogan, certainly not a conservative. Other folks like him as well, and this is what we do at Whiskey Politics. We want to have conversation. I'm not a firebrand conservative. I cut my teeth on Rush Limbaugh. Okay? Real quick story for you. I don't know how much time we have. Okay. Okay. When I was 9, 10 years old, after my very authoritarian father would yell, "Lights out!" Right? The lights would go out in my room, and I would take the cassette out. Remember with the boom boxes we all used to carry? And I'd hit play and record, and I would interview I don't know, Jimmy Carter, John Lennon, all the folks of that time, like Dick Cavett. I was 9, 10 years old. I had no idea what I was doing. And the reason that I wanted to do that was because I felt like, and at the time, obviously as an adult, I look back at it, but I was intellectually curious because I felt like what I was watching, even back in 1978, 1979, Walter Cronkite and eventually Dan Rather and Peter Jennings and those guys, I didn't feel like I was getting the whole story. And I felt like the 5 minutes or 3 minutes and now 30-second people screaming at each other on Fox News. Okay, I've been on these stations. I'm invited on these stations. I was just on OAN last week and Newsmax a couple of weeks ago. And it's me and 3 other people, and I get 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Where is the context now? It's only about getting zingers in. Okay? And why I started Whiskey Politics is in the same way that Tim Pool does an hour and a half. You don't need to watch him for an hour and a half to get the gist of it. But it shows people that, I'm sorry, the short attention span theater that we've had for the past couple of decades, it's made people dumber. What we're now doing by using tools like YouTube and Rumble and other sites is that we're now starting to learn the context of what we're discussing. And I think that's a positive, and I'm optimistic because of that. Thank you.
In the back, in the red. Go ahead, Dave.
Years ago, I read Marshall McLuhan
Yes.
talking about the medium as the message. And when I was a younger kid, I read George Orwell. And he seemed to be coalesced at the moment. What do you see happening in the future with conservative media and the ability of this country to get real information? How are things going to be realigned in the next year or two?
That's the $1 million question, isn't it? Honestly, I would tell you, shorter version, I'm not sure it can at this point. Because of technology. Technology, listen, we all grew up with 3 stations, and I was the kid that had to go change the channel for dad, right? Now, it isn't just the 500 stations, those that are still using cable or satellite have. It's the millions of options that you have online, using Roku and YouTube and all the other as well. So we're going to become more balkanized in the short-term future. The problem with that is that we're all in our own echo chambers. One of the things that I try to do at Whiskey Politics is I had Biden's senior advisor on my show a few months ago, Mo Vela. Guy's a bit of a jerk, but hey, listen, we had a civil discussion, and I asked him questions. Why was it so important for Joe Biden to pick somebody based upon her plumbing and her race, as opposed to her meritocracy? Well, that's important for us. It's important for everybody. No, it's not. I don't look, as a conservative, as a right-of-center person, I don't look at somebody based upon their melatonin or their plumbing. I look at you based upon what you have done. Are you a good person? And, you know, from that standpoint, meritocracy counts. So I don't know the answer to that question other than we do need to have some significant realignment in how information is delivered. I'm genuinely concerned. I'm petrified really now because it's very likely that President Trump will be fighting this, but we are looking at a Vice President Biden becoming president. And again, it isn't so much about Biden. I've been saying this for a year. It's the marionette string pullers. He's a Trojan horse. And the folks that are pulling the strings want you and I to shut up. They want us to go quiet. They want us to go back to making our widgets. And it's just making things for the state while they tell us exactly how to run our lives and how much money they can take out of our pockets. And so folks like me and others, I've had a serious discussion with my manager, Melissa Praemonitus, who runs Whiskey Politics, and I've been talking to her about this for the past 6 months. What happens if and when Joe Biden wins? Do we continue our show? Because I'm concerned that they are, and we saw this in Obama's administration, they are going to use the agencies to go after, and they are already making lists. We've seen this online. Okay? Trump Truth, what is it called? Accountability Project? I'm scared to death. I've got kids to support. I've got a kid in college and another one on the way. I can't afford to fight that. So their approach is to silence all of us. So we're going to be pushed further and further and further into different corners. And hopefully people come over to those corners, and maybe through the, I don't know, free markets and the success of capitalism, that those free markets will allow those corners to thrive. And then hopefully the mainstream media and the institutions will have to take notice of them. That's our only hope right now.
Yeah, 2 parts really, but one book I'm reading right now called The United States of Socialism by Dinesh D'Souza.
He was just on my show 2 weeks ago.
But he talks about the same problems that you mentioned with socialism, combined with identity politics, which has been a big problem. He goes into that. His latest film, Trump Card, gets in that too. The other part is, I got a book a year ago from an investment firm back east called Stansberry Research.
He's been calling for a financial crash for as long as I've been following him, right?
But he called it, as far as, he said Kamala Harris is going to be president a year ago. He said, now he thought maybe she'd be straight in there, but her campaign didn't go well, but she got in sideways.
Can I do one better?
Go
In
ahead.
June of 2019, I was on a panel and I said it's going to be Biden-Harris.
Oh, wow. Well, some people,
So,
you know.
I'm just patting my own back here on that one.
This was like around a year ago, because I got the book, and what they were talking about, how you invest when they take over, because there are, the economy is going to be topsy-turvy and stuff. So. Anyway,
Stansberry's an interesting guy, but he's been calling for financial cataclysm, and it could happen. I mean, national debt's $27 trillion climbing, so we'll see.
And that also doubled under Obama too. It's like,
Yeah.
Okay, last question. Go.
Thank you. I've heard rumors of robotics. Have you any knowledge of us being inoculated with some kind of vaccination where they can control us with the robotics?
Yeah, I've been reading some stuff online, and I don't like to talk about things that I see online unless it's proven. Yeah. They're talking about these micro little robots that go into the vaccine that track people. They could track your phone. They could track all of this.
Bill Gates.
Bill Gates. I try to stay out of that, and you know, the research that I do on it right now, it looks like it's kind of some fringy stuff that people are saying online. Listen, folks, even if people are our friends online politically and they are conservatives and they may be posting Trump pictures and this and that, you don't have to believe every single thing that you see. Okay, use your judgment. This is the question that that Ted Cruz had of Jack Dorsey yesterday. Okay, do you believe everything that you see online? No. Why not? Well, I use my own judgment. Use your own judgment. We don't need these people to tell us what is and isn't true. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was fabulous. And ladies and gentlemen, this is why you belong to the Pasadena Republican Club. We get fabulous speakers like this.